Hello everyone, I'm here today to do my second video for the Invisible Cities project for this month, and this one is about South Korea. So South Korea is actually another big country when it comes to translated literature, I will say. There's quite a few things that come from South Korea that arrive here. And I mean, not as much as Japan probably, but there is quite a few known authors that come from South Korea, like Han is the prime example, but also Jin Lee. So yeah, there is quite a lot of literature that arrives from South Korea to here, and I think one of the most interesting things, at least for me, about South Korea is the combined history with North Korea as well. Why they separated and the influence of Japanese colonizers and so on, because South Korea it's not a very big country in terms of land, but it does have a very big economy right now. But it has not always been that way, and for me it's interesting to see how that evolved and how different it became from North Korea. When North Korea at some point was the richest part of Korea. So yeah, I think that's something. Those dynamics are quite interesting to explore. There's also a lot of literature that is from Korean Americans. Most of them are South Korean Americans, but some of them left before Korea was divided as well. So yeah, there is a plethora of Korean influences in our society, I think, but still I wanted to go into a bit more things and books that I have read from South Korea that I think are worth a read. So I would divide the books I'm going to talk about into historical and contemporary literary fiction. So as I said, I personally find very interesting the dynamics of North and South Korea. And one book that for me really covered everything very well is Pachinko by Jin Lee. I think I learned a lot from that book on what the differences are. Pachinko follows a family, a woman that is from South Korea, from a very rural fishing village, and she gets pregnant. And then the Japanese occupy Korea, and then she has to flee. So they flee to Japan, and then they are not really accepted in Japan, but at the same time they are also not sure of where to go back because the Korea that they left doesn't exist anymore. And so we see like the interactions of Koreans and Japanese in Japan. It's not a perfect book. I have heard criticism about the drama that happens and different storylines, but I think if you don't know about South Korea's history, I think this is a good place to start. So yeah, I would recommend that one. Then of course you have Kang, and she has various books, and one of them that follows some of the history of South Korea is Human Acts, which follows a very, very violent protest that happened, and the consequences, and it goes into all of the gruesome details that you can imagine. I would not say I enjoyed this book because it's very gruesome, but I think it is a valuable read as well. And I think I had read The Vegetarian as well, which is a more contemporary story about the role of women in society in South Korea. I would say that's the main theme, and how everyone seems to have an opinion on these women's choices and bodies and etc. But that one I didn't connect with as much. I think Human Acts, it's the better book of the two. So yeah, take it as you will. And then one book that I read that is not from a Korean author, but it's about this island in South Korea, is The Island of Sea Women by Lisa C. And this follows this group of women that live in Jeju Island, which is in the south of South Korea. And they are divers, so they dive in the sea to collect. I think it was some kind of oyster or something, and that's how they make their money. And this society is a matriarchal society, which is not very common to find that. And I think it was quite interesting to read about this matriarchal society that exists, and it left me wanting to know more about this particular island in South Korea. There is another book about that island that is called The Mermaids of Jeju, I think, by Sumi Hahn, something like that, that I want to read. I haven't read yet, but I think it's a very interesting particular place that I would like to explore more of, because I don't think there are enough matriarchal societies, and it's always interesting to see the dynamics of one. Then another author, South Korean author, that writes a lot of historical novels that I have personally not read, but I have heard recommended enough, is Kyung-Sook Shin, which wrote things like Please Look After Mother. I think these are a bit more in the commercial side of things, so if you're not used to very heavy literary fiction, maybe this is a good way to start reading about South Korea if you're interested. I think it's a good place to start if you read something that's a little bit lighter and easier to go through. Again, I have not read it, so this is based on assumptions of people that have talked about the book. And then if we go to the more contemporary literature, I read, I think last year, Kim Ji-young, born 1984, and I really like this one. So this one is sort of showing the pressures that people put on Korean women, South Korean women. It is a very sexist society, from what I understand, from what I have heard from friends that I have been there and so on. It is a very sexist society. Women are supposed to be housewives, and they're also, like, the amount of plastic surgery that goes on, it's amazing, it's crazy. It's like at least 50% of the people in South Korea, or 50% of the women, get plastic surgery. Like, it's that common. It's like getting braces or something in your teeth for us, which for me it's crazy. But yeah, there are very high standards for Korean women to fit, and this book really dives into that. So Kim Ji-young, it's a very common name in Korea. It's the, like, if you want to say like everybody, you will say that. Like in our cultures, maybe it will be like Mary or John. You just mean everyone from that gender. So then in Korea is Kim Ji-young. So that means, like, this is the story of every woman, more or less. And I really enjoyed it. It's a bit of a different writing style. I think you have to get used to it because it's almost written as a non-fiction. It even has references within the text that of other sources that you can consult for statistics and so on. And it does have statistics in it, so it doesn't quite read as a novel. It reads more about a non-fiction, at least for me. But I really appreciated the view that it gave into what it is like to be a woman in this society that is, like, so modern and so oppressive at the same time. So yeah, I really recommend that one. And the other one that I read actually this month, so that I could complete my Invisible Cities, was Familiar Things. And this book is something that I had not read before from South Korea. It's a story of a boy and his mother that are very poor, and they live kind of in a slum, and they collect recyclable trash to sell as a job, and it goes into the mafia of that. And yeah, I had never read about slums in South Korea before, but yeah, I found it interesting. I don't think it had a very strong sense of place. If you would have told me, changed the names of the characters and told me that this was in India or in some other country, I would have believed it. In that sense, it didn't have this very strong feeling of, I don't know, the foods and the cities and so on. It was just about this slum in particular, which, yeah, in that sense, I didn't feel that it was very special, and I didn't feel like the story itself was that developed either. It was a very short book. It was less than 200 pages, so that makes sense. But yeah, it gives a different look into South Korea that I had never read about. So I appreciated the book for that. So yeah, that's a little bit of my experience with South Korea and South Korean books. I for sure will continue reading South Korean books. I think I found some really interesting topics that I would like to explore further. I want to read more Jin Lee. I think Pachinko was the perfect combination of readable but still interesting for me. And I also want to read more about Jeju Island because, of course, matriarchal societies are really interesting. In terms of food, I did cook some things. I didn't film it, so I'm sorry about that. But I made, let me see. I made this Korean fried cauliflower thing. It was really tasty, a bit spicy, but yeah, it was very tasty. And I still have some time, so I wanted to make maybe this like stew with kimchi and other things. I'm not sure because I'm not the biggest fan of kimchi, but it will be interesting to try. And this is from this Vegan East book. Has a lot of very good recipes to try. But yeah, my view of South Korean food is it's kind of spicy, but not too much, and it's very warming in a way. And yeah, I like it. It's not my favorite, but I do like it, and I would like to try some more recipes from South Korea. So if you have tried any recipe that you've loved, let me know because I would like to try. And if you have read any other books from South Korea that you really enjoy, also let me know. And if you have read any of the books I have mentioned. I think this is all for me in this video. I hope you enjoyed, and until next video, bye!